Hi folks, I'm Tom Flynn.
And I'm Chris Baker. Grab your best shades, put on the sunscreen, climb onto your favorite pool floaty, and get ready to relax, because this is the Why Not Read Alpha Flight 2025 Summer Spectacular!
Oh, Canada, our home and native.
That's right, folks. We've been working all year on what to do for this episode, and yeah, I think we've got something special here. Not just special, that is, spectacular. We've got a little something for everyone, so long as everyone is the kind of person who listens to this show, which I guess we have pretty well covered.
If you normally listen to this on a commute or bi-weekly constitutional or something like that, then plan to take a couple of those to get through this overstuffed episode.
But it isn't one very long episode. It's broken up for your convenience. We're not monsters.
Kind of like an annual issue of a comic book. A couple of interesting, but not terribly important to the big picture stories that fans can dig into while stuck in the backseat of a car on an interminable road trip to Hastings, Nebraska, because your sister wants to see the animatronic dinosaur display.
That's oddly specific.
That's what I recall from the summer of 1986.
Was this before or after you almost became a part of country music royalty?
Slightly before, actually.
Wait a minute. You were only 5 then. Are you sure that you didn't want to see the dinosaurs?
Moving on.
In this double-sized episode, we're keeping with our tradition of bringing in folks who know way more than us about pertinent issues. In this instance, we share with you a wonderful conversation about disability, ableism, and the word cripple with Dr. Joseph Stroman, who is Associate Professor of Philosophy and Chair of the Department of Classics and Humanities at San Diego State University. But before we get to that, we have a tasty summer treat as sweet as hearing the ice cream truck coming down your street, Alpha Flight Annual number 1.
I gotta say, this has been my single favorite issue of Alpha Flight so far. It's self-contained, and it doesn't tie into an existing arc or story. There are no interludes or vignettes or B-plot working us forward. It's everything I said I didn't like about New Alpha Flight. That was spelled N-U, by the way. And yet, I had an absolute blast with this issue. I don't think I had read this before, so it was great to get blindsided.
It's a really fun issue. And like you said, it exists within the larger Alpha continuity.
You can tell right where it goes.
Absolutely. But it also just, it doesn't weigh down on anything. It embellishes what came before, but it's just, yeah, it's also like a bottle episode, right? It's all taking place.
Oh, yeah.
It's all taking place in Mansion Alpha. I can't believe how.
Oh, yeah, and we haven't done anything in Mansion Alpha yet. Oh, you said it without thinking about it, Tom.
I'm so...
Nice. One of us. One of us.
Anywho, moving past that point, fully agree. Great issue. And for a longer than normal issue, it really did move quite well.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Ending's a touch abrupt, but, you know, page limitations.
It's Mantlo.
So in all those senses, this issue is really kind of a breath of fresh air. Alpha Flight can get very tightly knit. And there aren't a whole lot of truly self-contained stories that you can just sort of pick up and put down at will.
If you Google when this issue should be read, the AI tells you that it takes place before the Pestilence arc, and that is wildly inaccurate because Shaman has the talisman in this annual, and that happens at the end of the Pestilence story arc.
Not to mention that Snowbird brings up having lost her child and husband and wanting to die. And like,
oh yeah, longing for the sweet embrace of death. She's like that star from the from the Super Mario movie, you know, just that nihilistic death-seeking, and not the only time that's happened in a cartoon. Like it happens in a DC League of Super Pets that there's a super cute kitten who's all, I'm gonna murder you, meow. I don't know. I find that whole childlike innocent while expressing incredibly violent or nihilistic tendencies to be unpleasant. I want my nihilistic tendencies coming to me with a German accent in the form of Brain Drain from the Squirrel Girl podcast. Brain Drain debuted in Alpha Flight, Tom. There's a connection. I wrapped it up for you. Isn't that nice?
I really like how you were able to pull that all back together.
It's like sliding into the turn in Mario Kart. I pulled out just in time.
Also, Roger Box and Aurora are more than flirting in this issue, and we only barely saw that begin at the start of the Pestilence arc.
More than flirting, Tom? Is that what the kids are calling it these days?
I mean, I don't think she was edging him yet, but...
Ah, I need an adult, I need an adult, I need an adult, I need an adult.
All this is to say, don't trust AI. Really? Like, seriously, the AI read enough Alpha Flight and yet somehow...
No. It read what other people wrote about Alpha Flight. It has no clue about the concept. Tell you what, Tom, here we go. We're taking this. We're doing it. Fuck it. We'll do it. We're doing it live. An AI is not able to read a comic book. An AI does not look at the image of each page in order and track the story of what's going on. It can't read the word balloons and see how it goes over. If somebody has trained an AI on comic books to teach it how to follow that flow, if it can truly understand what's happening on the page, that is a huge leap forward.
That's basically general intelligence at that point. Yes.
Yeah, because there's so much cognitive stuff that has to happen to connect these things that doesn't have any real connection to each other than the orange hairy guy. Oh, that must be Sasquatch. However, some people draw Heather with really big orange hair, you know? And then sometimes Walt is a girl, you know? So, like, I think that there is a lot to be said about this because, remember, folks, when you're talking to AI, it's only reading what other people have said about this stuff.
And it's Alpha Flight, so a lot of that's what's out there is, pretty wrong.
Awful flight. That's what they have to say about it.
Although I will say I'm quite confident there's someone at one of the companies that is absolutely committed to getting an AI to be able to read comics on its own. And once we get to that point, well, that's Skynet, baby.
And if it hadn't started by now, I'm sure that the many influential and movers and shakers in the tech world who listen to our podcast, one of them is listening to this and saying, you know what? They're fucking right. That's what we do. We just got to feed it in all those comic books. Let's do this. So we have chosen the form of our destroyer, Tom. Remember, folks, the algorithm will kill anything and everything you love unless you kill it first.
Happy summer spectacular, folks.
I long for the sweet embrace of death.
Final point on how this is just, like, the AI is just dumb and wrong here is that the characters talk about how Shaman has changed since donning the tiara of the talisman. If he had only just put it on, then the changes would come as a bit of a surprise to their team members, but they all seem to be talking about this new paradigm vis-a-vis Shaman.
Yeah, it seems like that as cold as Michael is in this issue, they have already gone on the Atlantean war crimes getaway weekend already. All that to say, we are confident that we are covering this exactly when we should. And that's as much of the story so far as we're going to give you for today. I don't want to oversell it because it's so much fun. So without further ado,
Alpha Flight Annual Number 1, titled Homebody, cover date May 1986. Script by Bill Mantlo, layouts by Larry Stroman, finish by Gerry Talaoc, letters by Janice Chiang, colors by Bob Sharen, editing by Carl Potts, editor-in-chiefing by Jim Shooter. I died inside saying that.
It's a lame, silly credit, but once again, I wonder if that is the last lame, silly credit we'll ever see. So just last week, I was helping a 9-year-old learn how to read comics with Amazing Spider-Man number 350 from 1992.
He thought he was actually helping AI. He just didn't know it at the time.
Anyway, I was showing the basics like the issue number and the credits and stuff like that. And the credits to this one, because it's Amazing Spider-Man number 350, which I just totally didn't pay attention to when I grabbed it. The credits were not only super silly, but extremely loquacious and high-level vocabulary, far beyond a 9-year-old. So I had to grab number 349 to show her the right ones and then explain that sometimes they tell silly jokes by getting all super serious and high-minded with the words that they use. Other than that, it was a very successful comics education. I think I have inspired a Spider-Man reader for a couple of years. So remember, listeners, no comic book is too precious to not be read by a kid. I was reminded of this on Blue Sky recently, and that phrasing of it really helps me keep it in the front of my mind. So I'm going to say it again. No comic book is too precious to not be read by a kid. If you have a stack of floppies to get rid of, and you know the stack I'm talking about, unbagged, read almost to hell, but not quite, not worth anything to anyone except as a story that could change a kid's life. So if you have that stack, go down to your local public school, find the 4th grade reading teacher, give them the stack, and tell them to let their problem readers pick out whatever they want, one at a time. Theirs to keep. It doesn't work every time, but it can change a kid's life. So sometimes, Tom, you just have to go unbreakable on certain kids.
On the cover, the team is a perfectly generic layout.
No fair. I do that to you, not you do that to me.
On the cover of the issue is a perfectly generic layout of the team, apparently heading to battle. Stroman's take on the characters is solid. It seems to stem out of the Magnolia style we've been getting on the main book covers. I can make out Stroman's autograph, but can't tell who the other name is, presumably the inker, but whoever the inker is gave Northstar fully white hair like we're invading America back in Machine Man number 18.
I loved the art of this issue. It's solid panel construction, it's good detail, it's realistic and identifiable faces. I wish Larry Stroman had been the regular artist after Ross is done, which is actually pretty soon in our coverage.
Yeah, it really gets across everything it needs to. The action is quite kinetic. When different characters are struggling within Mansion Alpha, you get a real sense of what it is they're struggling against. It communicates everything it does really quite well, but also has a little bit of flair to it. Like, there is something recognizably distinct here in terms of the art within the context of the storytelling. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is about 5 years before he takes over X Factor with Peter David in 1991, which is where I first came across his art as a kid. And I imagine many of you listeners as well. He's always interesting, even if he doesn't draw people as pretty as other folks. He makes up for it by drawing all kinds of people in all kinds of colors and shapes when doing crowd scenes. And even as a kid, that stuck with me. This is different and it's kind of cool. I don't want to bog down the flow of our story by pointing it out in the flow of the story, but there's a single great panel pinup of Aurora, but specifically this era's Aurora.
And we are definitely in the De Roger era. Stroman really knocked that out of the park. Then Bill made Gilded Lily call her a hussy in the narration box. I mean, hey, Aurora is strong, confident. She's got a whole stance going on, and I believe there's a smirk on her face.
Also, in the very next panel is a Sasquatch mugshot, and it looks silly. And it's not like, oh, Sasquatch is taking a silly picture, silly. He's drawn very, like, cuddly. Like, it's a silly-looking picture for Walt. And Tom, this is not the cuddliest that Sasquatch will be drawn. Stroman does many things, but believable monsters is not his bag, at least in this issue. But wow, do I appreciate his human work in this, because everyone is believable and distinct in a way that the later X-Factor stuff got a little cartoonish and abstract for my taste. So this is really great. In fact, folks, if you haven't read this issue, go read it now. We'll wait.
Chris, we've talked about this a lot, about not telling people to stop listening to the podcast. So maybe reel that back in a bit, bud.
All right, fine. Okay, so if Stroman doesn't do monsters terribly well, the main monster in this issue is in fact invisible, so maybe even Stroman said, you know what, maybe we just skip the monster this time as a writing exercise, Bill, with a heavy wink.
If we could get Mignola and Stroman to team up on a book, I would be so happy personally. A book with pretty hussies and believable monsters. Although, I guess we already do have that. It's Alpha Flight.
I don't know whether to applaud or boo that statement. There's a varied panel construction and great work here that makes Mansion Alpha feel like a character for the first time in this book. And not just because it's the first time we're like doing anything there other than running around. It isn't like how Byrne used panels to be big and bold and cinematic, and it isn't rigid like Watchmen's infamous 12 panels per page. I don't think any 2 pages of this book are constructed the same in this giant-sized issue. Technical detour. Giant-sized means 36 pages of story instead of the standard 24, so less than a double-sized issue, but enough to be very satisfying. And double-sized issues often had filler in that back 12 pages anyway. A lot of times, like, reprints of stuff, or, like, they'd even reprint whole comic books with 2 pages turned sideways and then printed smaller onto 1 page. That's when you knew that they were really just stuffing it. So really, giant size. Giant size is where it's at, not double size. King size is right out, Tom.
How's the saying go? Last king. Anyway.
Oh, you do read my Christmas card, Tom.
And Mansion Alpha is very much a character in this story, which is, at its heart, a haunted house story, and the opening of the issue sets that up for us beautifully. We're going to slice and dice a bit with flipping back and forth to adapt this perfectly paced comic book to an audio medium because, well, you people don't want us putting on a really bad radio play, do you? I mean, do you? And I'm telling you right now, Chris wrote that because he wants to get commentary back that that's exactly what you guys want. And I swear to God, do not let me down here. Please, don't let me down.
But by let you down, you mean you want them to tell us that it would be a horrible idea to do a radio play?
Chris, they know both of us well enough at this point that they know exactly what I mean.
But I've already got the shoes on my feet and the board in front of me to make the footsteps sound like a bad Foley artist.
Please don't do this to me.
This issue takes place on what the narration box tells us is Midsummer Evening, but this could have been set on Halloween and been perfectly in place. So, some midsummer facts for you.
Midsummer is traditionally celebrated on the day of the summer solstice, which this year was on June 20th and in 1986 was on June 21st.
In the UK, Midsummer is one of 4 legal holidays known as quarter days, along with Lady Day on March 25. Lady Day on March 25, Michaelmas on September 29, and Christmas Day on December 25th, in case you didn't know that.
In Quebec, along with Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, Midsummer Day is a public holiday on June 24th annually.
And because I worked in a family video 20 years ago, I know there was a 2002 movie called A Midsummer Night's Rave. Working in a video store makes you intimately familiar with every movie in the building, at least as far as the title and the cover goes.
They really don't make little movies like that anymore.
I recall it was terrible. They still make terrible movies, Tom. If I can track it down, maybe we'll do an episode of Have a Drink on it for next Midsummer. Oh, and fun fact, Wikipedia tells me there is also a movie from 2001 titled Rave Macbeth, and while it technically is listed on the Pirate Bay, it has no cedars. So listeners, if you have access to the movie Rave Macbeth, I am very interested in hearing from you.
I feel like those movies all happen because of Go. That's just my guess.
Oh, they're all knockoff goes. That's what
Okay.
they are. But they dress themselves up with Shakespeare to try to feel more than that. Like, if I had a nickel for every time there was a rave-themed Shakespeare adaptation, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's still surprising it happened that many times.
And finally, early on, Puck tells Mr. Jeffries that he, Puck, is reading the play A Midsummer Night's Dream in a nice little throwback to Puck having many layers. That said, how many adults do you know who casually read Shakespeare? More to the point, how many adults do you know casually read Shakespeare while at a dinner table with their coworkers? That seems like kind of a look at me flex on Puck's part, and this doesn't track with his character, but it would be a very good way to communicate that he has disdain for, like, it would make more sense for North Star to be reading it on Midsummer Night, reading it on Midsummer's Eve to basically tell everyone else that he's better than they are and don't talk to me right now. That's not really Puck's vibe.
I could totally see North Star being the kind of dude who reads like Infinite Jest in public and as a way to keep people from talking to him. Huh.
I also could see him reading A Midsummer Night's Dream on Midsummer's Eve and being like, "The Puck, do you know the origin of your name?" As if Puck wouldn't know where the fuck his code name came from. But that's North Star.
Well, hey, look at me flex of reading complicated literature in public. Look, Tom, we were both philosophy majors. We can smell our own. We understand what that is.
Does that mean that both Puck and North Star are our own?
Yeah, apparently. Like, I have read the collected works of Plato on a plane before.
Yeah, we're not going to get into the books I've read on planes.
Alpha Flight is gathered in Mansion Alpha's dining room to have dinner together.
Heather is making dinner for the whole team, which apparently consists of programming a recipe into the kitchen computer and having it cook for them like some incredibly inefficient replicator from the Enterprise D. But the Enterprise doesn't have robot sister of the food for them like Mansion Alpha.
Wait, since this is a holiday in Quebec, is Heather making a holiday meal for North Star and Aurora and having the team celebrate a holiday together? That adds another layer to this that's sweet, Tom.
The meal setting gives Mantlo a chance to lay out what we need to know about the characters for this story to make sense. Heather is the doting but firm mom of the team. Aurora is not just flirting with, but apparently with Roger Box at this point.
That certainly happened fast.
Aurora says to Roger, I can't even say his name anymore without like almost saying it like Aurora.
Roger.
Why don't you design something to make me as happy as your scholarly droves I've made our leader, dear Roger? Droves? Drones? It doesn't matter. I don't know, man.
Roger replies, "If you just give me some idea of what you'd like."
That's leading. Aurora. I like to have men around me. Men with brawn. Men with brains.
Roger thinks, "I guess it's my genius that fascinates Aurora then, because she can't possibly see much else in the wheelchair-bound paraplegic. She's so physical. How long can intellect alone continue to excite her?"
I feel like the ellipsis, which Chris did a great job of communicating verbally, but I feel like the ellipsis before so physical is doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
When Aurora asked Roger for a machine to make her happy, I expected it to end messier than this.
Jesus.
North Star is painted as a bit snotty, though it seems softer here. He is definitely not the overt prick he was with Byrne. He's just more of your standard Quebecois.
I mean, he's still there. If he was going to quit, he would have done it by now, which is something that Heather explicitly calls him out on. Mr. Jeffries also does ask, I think not for the first time, whether or not North Star, after making a pretty crappy comment towards Roger, whether North Star enjoyed pulling the wings off of flies as a child.
Yeah, it's weird to be repeated like that. North Star is the opposite of Sunfire, who I believe quit the X-Men 3 times in one issue and then wasn't there for the next one.
Moving on to the other members of the team.
Snowbird is distant and kind of ethereal. Shaman stands apart from the team, and when Heather calls him for dinner, Michael says, "No, Heather, thank you. I no longer eat food." Which isn't an ominous at all, is it, Tom?
What does he eat, Bill? What does he eat?
What does he eat? What does he eat, Bill?
Also, another just bang-up job with the ellipsis, my man. You're just...
Oh, I can pause dramatically like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, I can believe it.
The team is first alerted to something being wrong with Mansion Alpha when the mansion itself trembles and shakes in a way that no mere earthquake could produce. They race off to get into their special super suits and then investigate like a latex-clad Scooby gang.
I've seen that movie.
You don't sound happy about it, though.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, I think I sent it to you. Just before this, as the book opens, a narration box says, "I am alive!" And we come to find out those boxes are from the perspective of the house itself, as it reconciles how it is able to feel alive, and wonders if this is what death feels like. Okay, well, maybe not that house itself. That's how I first read it. Let's say a disembodied voice muses to itself about whether it is alive or dead.
We flip through some detailed panels of rooms inside the house as the boxes marvel at how things have changed.
Madness! This was my kitchen, but I recognize it not. Surely, no matter who these interlopers might be, they could not have discovered my hidden laboratory. And the art shows us that this laboratory is now an indoor pool and gym straight from 1986.
Folks, have you figured it out yet?
That's right, folks. It's throwback villain time. Gilded Lily is back, baby. We last saw the ancient and semi-immortal alchemist ancestor of secret agent superhero linebacker Dr. Walter Lankowski in Alpha Flight number 20, her first appearance and apparent death the next issue when she and everything else inside the mansion turned to dust after Sasquatch opened the gold that encased her body and a century of aging caught up with her in a second. When Walter died...
Everybody dance now.
When Walter died, the Canadian government seized Tamarin Island and the ancestral mansion on it and rebuilt it to be a high-tech HQ for Alpha Flight.
Colonizer done got colonized.
As part of that reconstruction, they had to make mortar to hold it together, and some of the dust of Lily's body got mixed into it. And since she is very, very alchemical and semi-immortal, she now haunts the house, which is as good an explanation as any, Tom.
Do recall that Lily was famed as gorgeous in her lifetime, enough so to nab close to a dozen husbands, whom she subsequently encased in gold to suffer an eternity of living death as statues. So, not having a body, even the weird magical machine that was most of her body when she died, it's still a big deal for her. It's weird. She's feeling a little out of sorts.
What we're saying is, Lily fucks.
Correction. Lily fucked. And she would like to fuck again. Speaking of, she decides against killing Alpha Flight out of revenge and instead chooses to pursue a course of action that could bring her back to physical life. And to do so, she needs some more experienced alchemical help in the form of her old lover and mentor, the venerable and intensely silly Fantastic Four villain, Diablo.
Let's take a moment to shout out Janice Chiang for some great work on the narration boxes. Lily's Thoughts have their own hard edge box with pink edging, and the omniscient narrator boxes are in yellow, often in the same panel, and they always look great. With that, take it away, narration boxes.
Something passes through Mansion Alpha to Roger Box's workshop/laboratory. There, chemicals carefully segregated from each other suddenly commence to mingle and mix, while futuristic modem phone begins to autodial a number a continent away.
So Lily alchemicals up an electrical elemental to do her bidding and sends it through the futuristic modem phone across North America to the Oswego, New York State Penitentiary, where Diablo is imprisoned after the Fantastic Four and Doctor Strange teamed up to catch him in Fantastic Four number 232. Thank you for that editor's note, Carl. That was bothering me.
Apparently they caught him without violence too. Diablo was leaving his hideout and Reed just hit him with a spotlight from the Fantastic Car and wrapped Diablo in his arm. Strikes me that was probably pretty anticlimactic.
It was. Diablo is not a man who wants to fight on an even fair fight with anybody. And also, Tom, have you ever used a futuristic modem phone, the kind in war games where you put the phone on the cradle?
I may have at some point, though, and this is going to fire your noodle. I've never seen war games.
You know, the first time I watched it was when I did it with my youngest just a couple of weeks ago, and she's almost 9, and she totally got the whole story. At the end, the only winning move is not to play, and she's like, oh yeah, that does make sense. I'm like, kid, you're going far.
As the electrical elemental closes in on Diablo, he yells, "Guards, keep the creature from me! You are charged with my safety!" Which isn't a terribly baller thing for a supervillain to yell. The guards all say, the bars are electrified. Good luck,
Yeah,
basically. Yeah. I mean, they just kind of hold their hands up.
Sir, where do you think you are? Is pretty much what they said.
Sir, you should be happy that we're going to let them take you and not just, like, shoot you before you escape.
It's 1986. I make $13.50 an hour. Okay, buddy?
The elemental grabs Diablo from his cell, converts him to electricity, and brings him back to Tamarind Island.
There was a Genosian mutant who could do this in the team called the Press Gang, but whenever people appeared out of the phone line, they were naked.
So that's just like another case of the artist's barely disguised fetish, right?
Why do you think people get into art, Tom?
Woof.
In the meantime, Lily has been busy getting her house cleared of its superpowered pests. She is most concerned with Mr. Jeffries. So was Delphine Courtney. You'd think Heather would figure out that if everyone is afraid of a dude, you should use him more often.
Though I question how much Jeffries told her about how he handled Delphine.
Oh yeah, I totally imagine him like really downplaying.
Like, she's out of commission. I took her down, but not the whole like, oh yeah, I just turned her inside out painfully.
Yeah, I killed her with malice, and then I made a coat for you. Here you go, try it on.
It's weird mating ritual.
Oh, that comes later, Tom.
Jeffries is maneuvered into an elevator, and, well, wouldn't you know it, Lily keeps electrocuting him to keep him there.
Again, a case of the artist's barely disguised fetish.
She similarly traps Shaman and Puck in a different elevator by spinning it like a centrifuge.
Lot of elevators in Mansion Alpha.
Northstar is trapped speeding towards a hallway door that never gets closer, no matter how fast he runs, and I have to say, that was a very effective panel usage. Like the stretching of the panel, they did a really great job of communicating something that obviously was narrated to a certain extent, but you wouldn't have needed the narration box to get the sense of, oh wait, this room just keeps expanding. It was very well done.
Finally, Snowbird is sitting on a log outside the mansion thinking grippy sock thoughts.
What Chris means to say is, having rejected her godhood for humanity, she has lost her baby and now her husband, and is thinking she done fucked up as hard as godly possible. Heather comes out to chat with her and then tells her to suit up when the house locks itself up behind her, trapping Heather and Snowbird, who is now opted for her Sasquatch form, outside and unable to help.
That leaves Aurora and Roger Box, who are down in the laboratory/pool fitness area.
The omniscient narrator says these two were kept deliberately unaware of the attacks launched on their teammates. Okay, but why are they in the pool? They were at dinner. They felt the earthquake. Everyone else rushes off to put on their super suits, and Aurora rushes off to put on her teeny-weeny bikini, and Roger starts taking laps, though some might argue Aurora went and put on her super-duper suit.
Ooh.
You hate that so much.
No, actually, I don't even want to boo it. It was just a reflex. Cut the boo. Stroman's Roger is great. He is very pudgy, but also very muscled in his arms. As Roger says, having no lower body, I developed a lot of upper body strength. There is only one very tiny incidental shot in one panel of Roger's wheelchair in this issue at the dinner table. If he hadn't said that, it would be totally reasonable for a new reader to not know that Roger didn't have legs below the thighs. This right here, like, Tom, I'm telling you, this is peak Roger. He's a nice guy. He's really starting to see some benefits from trying to be a nice guy and no longer trying to murder Delphine Courtney. Because he found the right guy to murder Delphine Courtney. Truly, Roger has been the hero of the post-Byrne era.
Yeah, the way you say that tells me that this is not going to go well.
Horrible, Tom.
No, great.
Just the worst. So really, soak in the peak Roger, folks.
As Aurora sits at the edge of the pool and distracts Roger from his exercise, suddenly the box with an X armor begins to topple forward directly towards them. Roger bravely pushes Aurora out of the way, only to be pinned underwater by what must be a couple of tons of who knows what. As Aurora gets up, she leans against one of the mirrors that lines the walls. Oh yeah, by the way, the pool, like, completely surrounded by mirrors. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
1986, yeah.
I mean, this doesn't really feel like a training pool. It feels like...
It's a performance pool.
It very much feels like a performance pool. A lot of water aerobics down there. As Aurora leans against one of the mirrors and screams, "Roger!" Lily's caption box says...
You cannot help him now, Minx, and I have far more need of your body than he did. Oh, God. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll take it again clean. Ew. And she wanted to pose her up special. Oh, God, Lily. I need an adult. And Aurora is pulled into the mirror. Look, I know that you're going to take that cut anyway, so...
Just accept it.
Lily was born around 1855 or so. She's learned a lot about alchemy since then, but it seems she hasn't learned that it's okay for her to have a girl crush.
Before he drowns, Roger remembers that he could just merge his pudgy body with the box armor and problem solved. The problem is solved. He solved the problem. The problem is solved. He then leaps out
Everything is awesome.
He then
Come on, if you get it right or pay the price, Tom.
He then leaps out of the water and realizes Aurora has been taken. Look, I accept that this is peak Roger. That's fine. I simply need to point out that underwater in Atlantis, he panicked.
Yeah.
Shot himself out of the armor, gave himself the bends, then put himself back into the armor. And
Which we're going to pick up with directly in the next issue. So you're right. This must be before the Atlantean war crime.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Roger has a really bad habit of forgetting that he's a fucking superhero at this point and can merge with the armor that he built. He built this functionality into the armor, and yet in extremis, he keeps panicking and removing himself. So, well, I'm not knocking the guy because a lot of this stuff is wild. I am maybe suggesting that perhaps Roger is a brilliant engineer, maybe not cut out for the superhero lifestyle.
Oh, do you mean that JMH found someone who was a brilliant engineer, but maybe not cut out for the superhero lifestyle?
How do you afford your superhero lifestyle?
Is it you or your country in this income tax bracket?
Yeah.
Oh, Tom, thank you. That you warmed my... Folks, I'm the biggest cake fan in the world, and I mean the band, not the baked good. And now our two stories join back up. Diablo emerges from the futuristic modem phone in the laboratory and hears the mansion give a relieved sigh. Then, quote,
Suddenly, Diablo finds himself experiencing the sickening sensation of being held in a disembodied embrace.
Oh, and Diablo just has this look of revulsion on his face where he's just like, what is going on? This is icky.
He runs away from whatever weirdness is going on. And can you imagine the weirdness this dude has seen in his 1,200 years of alchemical adventures? And this made him run? This made his skin crawl?
Lily is awesome. But yeah, 1,200? He's 1,200 years old. Back in issue number 21 in 1875, he told Lily he is 1,000 years old. That's a long-ass time. As he runs away, he turns a corner and literally runs into Box.
Diablo exclaims, "A metal man!"
Box says, I know I am Buster, but who are you? I want answers, mister.
Gladly if I had any.
Just then, the walls of the mansion hallway press in on Box and trap him in place. Box assumes this is all Diablo's fault because that is a perfectly reasonable conclusion at the moment. Very impressive strength in the walls to be able to hold Box, though. I mean, he's the heavy hitter of the team. He's the strong guy, if you will.
He should be. It seems whenever a heavy hitter is needed, Snowbird takes on her white Sasquatch form to hit heavy things, and Box still hasn't quite figured this out yet. Again, going back to the whole, like, doesn't quite know how to superhero thing. Yeah.
It's not coming from a place of confidence and power like Sasquatch in the pre-team book days. Roger isn't enjoying this. He does it because this gives him legs and the attention of Aurora.
He really does just seem to be a sweet dude who doesn't really seem to have the heart for this. And, you know, I can't knock a guy for being compared to Langowski and kind of being the opposite. I feel like that's something we should all aspire to be.
Lily guides the scared and confused Diablo back to the laboratory and uses some chemical stuff to make herself visible and also to give Diablo his supervillain costume instead of his prison clothes. Yeah, because he's been doing this whole thing in a prison jumpsuit. Diablo is not on top of his game right now.
How does alchemy make a costume complete with alchemical tricks hidden in the gloves?
How does Storm change from her clothes into her costume using lightning in the X-Men cartoon opening?
I guess I would assume unstable molecules are involved in both situations.
All right, this is a minor derail, Tom, but alchemy is really and truly just scientists using magic, right? Like, it's people taking a scientific approach to something that we might call magic, right?
Sure. I mean, look, it depends on how you want to view magic or how magic is being constructed within a universe. Like, with the idea in D&D that like wizards study ways to manipulate magic, and that's why they can only cast at certain levels. That's why warlocks have natural abilities, all that. It just really depends on what the system is and how you want to understand it. But alchemy in our world was one of the earliest forms of science, right? At least during the Dark Ages on, and even beyond that, beyond the Dark Ages, it was sussing out what was fact and what was fiction in terms of what people believed, right? And as the scientific method was developed, they moved away from the ideas of being able to turn, whatever into lead into gold or whatnot, though now we actually kind of have the ability to do that, but in manipulating at the atomic level, we could kind of pull that off. So yeah, you could say that alchemy is scientists tackling magic. Sure.
I generally am not a magic fan. It seems to be either a system that if you explain it, it's no longer magic, and if you don't explain it, it's just we're breaking the rules because that's what the story needs right now.
I thought you were going to say that's because you don't like Russians, and that's why you're not a magic fan.
Oh, magic with a K. Yeah, we did see lots of magics at the Uncanny experience.
Yep. Lily catches Diablo up on what's been going on since they saw each other last and tells him that they are the headquarters of the super team.
Which was hundreds of years ago, by the way. There's been a lot.
Just over 100 years.
Well, yeah, when he got capped, yeah, I guess it was over 100 years. Go.
They are in the headquarters of the super team Alpha Flight. And this is where we shift out of the horror story and into comedy. Diablo says, "Super team? Then there are more foes to face than the middleman I met in the corridor?"
And a powerful assemblage they are indeed. But one of them possesses a body both young and lovely, and in her form you shall help me to attain immortality.
No! I'm sorry, I'm having too much fun.
No, it's great. It's great. All we're doing, you don't even realize it.
We're doing the fucking radio play, I know.
No, I didn't mean to. There's just so much, because the interplay of them is delightful.
Yeah.
No? Perhaps you should explain.
I am done fighting with superheroes. Never in all my encounters with their breed have I been victorious. Were I to help you possess one of their number, dooming her so that you might live, they never rest until they have my head.
Together, our power pooled, we could defy them and the world.
I am not sure I want to be joined to some century-old female fury who's every bit my alchemical equal.
And Lily responds with a, "What?" So powerful, the entire mansion quakes.
It's the kind of what that
yeah, we can't convey it through the volume limited everything.
Oh yeah, we'll blow your speakers with how bad. But it's the what born out of over a century of longing and misplaced apparently love and just total betrayal. Yeah,
it is a what that carries the implied the fuck after it.
Yes.
I really feel for Diablo here. He was in his prison cell, safe from any super weirdo who might want to make a name for themselves by catching him. He was on the road to reforming when his ex pulled him out of his safe space and expects him to be who he used to be instead of who he is now.
Except that who he is now is also who he used to be. The dude just wants to do his time and go back to doing his alchemy stuff. 1,000 years ago, even 100 years ago, he was hot shit and no one could take him down except through luck. Now half of New York has powers that make his look like party tricks, and he knows he's outclassed. He's probably dreaming of alchemicaling up. That's quite a word you wrote there, Chris.
Doing things with alchemy is its own unique activity, which is why it's called alchemicling.
Sure. He wants to do that thing, to create a pile of gold and live like a nobleman for the rest of time. Nothing but caviar and whores for him. No more supervillain. No, sir. But again, I just want to emphasize here, this was a guy that impressed the shit out of Lily 100 years ago by being exactly who he is right now. He had her trapped in a castle. He showed her some cool tricks, all that stuff. And now that we're out in the world, like, I think Lily's kind of clocking that while she needs him, he's not as impressive as she might have thought he was.
See, and I read this a little bit differently. I feel like back when there were fewer people who could do anything as cool as him, that Diablo really relished being the guy who was on top, and that he loved lording it over people. And now that he's gotten out of his 100-year prison and he has emerged into a different world, instead of upping his game and trying to keep up with this, he's looking around at the super teams and whatnot and saying, you know what? No. I like to play this game when I'm winning, but now that I'm not winning, I'm done with this game. I'm backing away. I'm not going to be, the guy who's trying to be in charge of anything. I'm not going to try to steal anything. I'm not going to try to oppress any small Transylvanian towns. I'm just going to figure out where I fit in this whole power structure, because I have always been a coward. It was only when I felt like I had an insurmountable edge that I felt confident.
And apparently back in that time, there weren't normal voices, so she heard his dulcet tones and thought that was a real man that, like, totally could do everything.
Well, her husband
she
had
needs.
just died in a carriage crash. She was probably, concussed and having some trouble, so we'll cut her some slack.
Yeah, no, I far prefer Lily to Diablo.
This outburst broke Lily's attention to her alpha traps, and the whole team gets free. She tells Diablo how it's gonna be. You will use your alchemical skills to help me attain immortality, or I shall let them have you.
Them? Oh no, not them!
No, he's not talking about the old movie with the giant bugs called Them.
An Alpha Flight bursts into the room, ready to brawl.
Diablo realizes his new costume has weapons in the gauntlets, and Lily points out, none of which have ever won you anything but defeat in the past.
Curse you!
I love the bickering old couple dynamic. I think somebody needs to bring these two back. In the face of certain face punching, Diablo throws in with Lily strictly out of fear. Lily alchemicals the bad guys away to what is apparently yet another hidden laboratory beneath Roger's workshop, but not in the pool area.
Look, there's only 8 pages of story left. Bill's in a bit of a hurry, and some things aren't important. Rule of cool, bruv. Rule of cool.
But she came looking for her hidden laboratory, and it wasn't there, and so she goes and finds her even more
I
hidden
invoked
laboratory.
the rule of cool. We're moving on.
I acknowledge that you have invoked the rule of cool, and I am fulfilling the sacred oath.
In this space, there are a bunch of chemicals and tubes and stuff. Yeah, just stuff to work with, as well as a big standing mirror, inside of which we find Aurora and Lily. It is so dark, they are drawn in negative with black skin and white hair. And I don't even know if it's like black skin. It's much more like it's like white outlines to give you a sense of where they are than it is like a sort of like photo negative sort of thing.
Yeah, totally a better way of describing this than black skin and white hair. It's so dark, in fact, that it has paralyzed Aurora, who fears dark spaces for reminding her of the torture she endured at the hands of people claiming to share Jesus' love with her.
As Lily catches Diablo up on her plan, Aurora mumbles, "Have mercy, sisters. I have done nothing wrong." Diablo says, "You would look like her? Perhaps I spoke too soon before when I said I had no wish to spend eternity by your side. We would make such a splendid match after all." What a fucking creep.
Oh, he's fantastic! Oh, this issue is great. Suddenly, Alpha Flight bursts through the wall, which we have, again, no way of understanding how any of this stuff connects together. Diablo is drawn here with his hand to his mouth, gasping in surprise. He's kind of... Is effete the word here for this art, Tom?
No, he's just a coward. Lily holds the team at bay from within the mirror while Diablo frantically works on whatever alchemical MacGuffin will let Lily take over Aurora's body and also, make her truly immortal like him.
Heather is able to use her super suit to dispel the dust storm attacking them, and the team closes in on Diablo. Lily points out that none of them can magic their way into the mirror, and Box says, "Your boyfriend's an alchemist, isn't he? I bet he can figure out some way to get Aurora out of there. Hit him before he can use that potion against us."
Hit him!
Hit that guy! Hit that man! Hit him!
If he doesn't give it up, hit him again. to which Diablo responds, "No, stay back. I'll deliver your teammate. I'll do anything to avoid being hurt." Just as North Star hits him high and Puck hits him low. Diablo is the dude who was king shit of Fuck Mountain back in the day and is realizing he isn't much of anything anymore, and I am here for it.
This is the third time he's switched sides, and he's only been in half this issue. The potion Diablo was working on flies out of his hand toward the mirror. Lily reaches through the mirror to grab it, inadvertently letting in a glimmer of light that lets Aurora come to her senses and activate her own internal light that it seems Bill has forgotten she has most issues.
Aurora grabs the potion before Lily can while they are both still inside the mirror. Diablo warns them, "Whatever you do, don't spill it! It's extremely volatile until it combines with organic molecules."
Box says,
That's not enough. Do I lean on your legs, or...
And man, that's got some extra meaning from, like, part of me feels like Roger would be happy to take some legs.
oh my god, now I'm envisioning, like, the Box with an X armor, and Roger just, like, whenever there's a super villain that needs to be tortured, Box is just like, we're gonna start from the toes up, buddy. Here we go.
Diablo thinks, "This can't be happening! All I wanted was to be left alone. My time in prison was almost up. They'll never believe I didn't arrange my escape. They'll add on still more time. I can't go back, but I won't let myself be hurt by these heroes anymore either."
Just stop punching me, please. While Diablo is frozen with uncertainty, Aurora decides that if the potion has to bond with some organic molecules, then it will be Lily's organic molecules and not Aurora's, and she pours the potion into Lily's mouth. Okay, couple of things. Is Lily organic? Her body is a bunch of alchemical stuff that shaped itself out of mist or something?
That's also, like, currently in a mirror.
Yeah, right.
Also, like, how did her mouth open? When we met her the first time, the gold mask was intentionally a mask that was hard and solid and unmoving. And so far in this issue, it seems to have been the same dynamic, but now her mouth is open as she says,
No!
The potion neutralizes the potions Lily had used on herself over the decades, and once again, all her aging catches up with her all at once, and she dissolves into dust as she falls out of the mirror, thus allowing Aurora out as well. Chris, I think we can knock this up to two things. It's alchemy, so it can be whatever, and rule of cool. Actually, not rule of cool, more we're running out of panel time.
More 2 pages left, I think. 2 pages, Turkish. Then the Mounties come in a tiny boat to take possession of Diablo and extradite him back to the States, where he will have an extra 5 to 10 years added to his sentence.
Heather says, "What's that to someone who has lived as long as you?" And, you know, that's a pretty good point. I would say I'd be shocked that a person that's lived that long a life could, like, reform in prison over the course of 5 years, but I don't think it's reforming. I think it's, as we've covered, Diablo reckoning with his place in the world, shall we say.
You know, there's a Roger Klein song where he says, spent the weekend in the county jail. Thanks for the time I had to think a spell. Maybe when you've lived 1,200 years and you're used to doing whatever it is that you feel like, yeah, he got locked into like a well or something for 100 years. That's a different kind of solitude and contemplation than you get in prison, where you're regularly interacting with the guards and eating the food and probably interacting with some of the other, people and whatnot. I can see where that would be very helpful for a guy like that to sort of just step back and be like, all right, I got to figure out some moves. This is fine. Here we go. Let's figure this out.
So do you think that that they took him away in a leaky little boat?
I hope so. I really do.
Well, that wraps up the first half of our Summer Spectacular. I thoroughly enjoyed this issue. Folks, we covered how the beginning of the Mantlo run was pretty rough. Obviously, Bill's kind of hit his stride, and really, this is just top-notch storytelling. It's a really effective issue. It gives like good attention to pretty much everyone it needs to in here. I guess maybe Puck is a little in the background, but he and North.
Yeah, Puck, North Star, Shaman. Where the fuck is Shaman?
I mean, once again, I actually had this theory that his losing his humanity, it's also why he's not really like showing up and showing out in these issues, because he kind of doesn't care. Like,
yeah, he's like,
what's one person? If a city's in danger, come find me. If it's like a teammate,
If it's one of you, I don't care.
I couldn't care. It's not that
Best teammate ever.
it's not that I don't want to care. It's that I can't care, and that's an interesting distinction.
Absolutely. What a fun issue. Best issue of the series so far. Next up, we've got our conversation with our old college buddy, Joe Stramondo. It's a really fascinating and fun talk, which, given the subject matter, is impressive and almost entirely due to Joe. We know you'll enjoy it as much as we did.
Joining us today is Dr. Joseph Stramondo, an associate professor of philosophy and humanities, the director of the Institute for Ethics and Public Affairs, and chair of the Department of Classics and Humanities at San Diego State University. During the 22 to 23 academic year, he was the Hubert Mader Visiting Professor in Bioethics at the Albert Nagy Center for Healthcare Ethics at St. Louis University. His research focuses on the intersection of biomedical ethics and philosophy of disability. Namely, he is concerned with how healthcare ethics can be reframed by centering the lived experiences of disability as a crucial source of moral knowledge that should guide clinical practice, biomedical research, and health policy. He has published over 30 scholarly papers and is devoting most of his present research effort to developing a book manuscript that is tentatively titled The Ethics of Choosing Disability, and it is under contract with Oxford University Press.
More importantly, Joe began his long career in higher education at the same humble place that Tom and I did. So when we were having some difficulty talking about Box and Puck and disability and how Mantlo was treating it, we knew exactly what expert to turn to. So Joe, thank you for making the time to sit down with us for our silly little podcast that we all love so much.
Oh, it's exciting. I'm listened to a few episodes, and I'm excited to reconnect with you guys after all these years. And
oh yeah,
that's something we both have some interest in here.
Well, the episodes are like sitting around in a dorm room back in the day, aren't they?
Yeah, a little bit less mind-altering substances involved, at least.
Oh, yeah, says you.
I won't speak for you two.
I would argue that's more of a listener's choice than it is our decision making on that particular front.
Well, Joe, we sent you a couple of Alpha Flight issues to give you a feel for Roger Box and Puck, and we sent some other pages to give you some supplementary material. Now, are you familiar with Alpha Flight from before we sent those to you?
No, I had never heard of Alpha Flight before. I had heard of Puck, actually. I don't remember who it was that first told me about Puck, but I remember the context was that Peter Dinklage had been cast in a Marvel film, and there wasn't any information yet as to how he had been cast. And so there was some speculation that maybe Puck would make an appearance. Turned out that it wasn't the case. Of course, but there was sort of that rumor flying around, and so I had heard of the character, but I was unfamiliar with Box and the rest of them.
Well, what'd you think of Puck's first appearance then?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that that they handled the Puck storyline, not in the worst way possible.
Hey, for 80s comic books, we'll take it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I really look for when thinking about sort of characterization of dwarfism is how much stock is put in sort of characterizing people with dwarfism as the other, right? And you can do that in all kinds of different ways. The way it's usually done in fantasy literature is by making dwarfs sort of part of a separate race, like you would with like J.R.R. Tolkien, right? And so my favorite characters in pop culture that have dwarfism aren't characterized in that way, right? But are rather characterized as sort of actual human beings with human emotions and human, experiences and human relationships and so on and so forth. Very unlike sort of the Snow White and the Seven Dwarf kind of thing, or the Gimli from Lord of the Rings kind of thing, right?
Well, so not to bring it back to Peter Dinklage, but like his character in Nip Tuck was introduced as a dwarf, and he was just a dude. Like he just happened to be a dude who was a lot shorter. It was like the only good thing about that entire show.
Yeah. I haven't actually seen that. I've had
You're
some
wise.
friends that
Don't.
Yeah, I've had some friends that have sort of talk to me a little bit about that character, and so I know a little bit about it.
Well, it happens so rarely. It's the only time that I can think of that I'm like, oh yeah, they just treated this like a normal person. And also there was a character in Loudermilk that was released recently where it was also introduced in a way that I was like, oh, hey, cool. They're a normal person. This is awesome.
Yep. Yeah, no, I actually know that actress. She's fantastic. Yeah, no, I mean, the other example, actually, Chris, that I was thinking of that a lot of people probably are familiar with is Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones, right? In that, he is, and I think that was why he was, such a powerful character, in that, he had this difference that gave him a different set of experiences than some of the other characters in the show, but it didn't other him as sort of non-human or as, somehow separate from the human experience. It was just sort of a variety of human experience or a difference.
Right. I mean, he was othered just as much as he was othered more than other folks in the show, but there's a constant othering and dehumanizing of pretty much every character in some capacity in that show. His physical appearance and everything that they connected to that certainly heightened it and made it a more frequent point of tension. But yeah, no, I would agree. Like he was recognized as being there's something full about how even the people who hated him understood him to be. He wasn't just a thing. He was something to be contended with, just like anyone else, just in different capacities. Certainly.
And he was recognizably human.
Yes.
Right?
From jump, they had him having like incredible amounts of sex and being that was a very deliberate choice, I think, on their part to really sort of like turn on its head this notion of what is desirable, what is not, and all these things, and really kind of work against a lot of the tropes that just simply exist within the larger, especially the larger pop culture, and as you're saying, it within a fantasy setting, certainly, right?
Yep, exactly. And so that's one of the things that I really appreciated about the introduction of Puck anyway, right? Like we see other stuff happen later. But when it comes to sort of his first, appearance that you sent me, if I read them correctly, in the right chronology, he was sort of more or less introduced as, a character that happened to have dwarfism. There wasn't anything,
right,
supernatural or funny about him, right? Which was almost surprising, right? In a comic book, right? You would expect there to be something supernatural about him,
and then it gets there,
and then it gets there, and this is precisely why we wanted to chat with you about this, because I think from jump, one of the things you pointed to was the othering. There is no significant othering of Puck in the Alpha Flight comics. In terms of him being a dwarf. I mean, like, he has things to contend with. They all do. They all have their limitations. They all have things going on in their personal lives or in their past that come up in whatever capacity. But he's not othered. And there's something about, there's a lot about how Mantlo treats it with the whole mystical, injection of a mystical background for why he's a dwarf that really others and bothers the hell out of me.
And I think that what gets me about the othering is the way that I hear Puck and Roger speak about themselves, that they have internalized that otherization and they don't think that they are worth being a person. And that hurts to see on the page. And I'm not even a person who is impacted by this particular issue. Now, and we can pause for a second. Now, Joe, should we mention that you are a person who is a dwarf?
Yeah.
So, yes, listeners, Joe is also a person who happens to have dwarfism.
Yes, I have.
There we go.
I say that I collect disabilities. Dwarfism is one of them. Probably the most obvious to folks who see me. Of course, I know that this is just going to be audio.
Well, one of my best friends has a sticker on her car that says, "Not all disabilities are visible."
That's right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that is definitely relevant, right? As far as, not just thinking about things through sort of my scholarly background, but also through my personal experience, right? And that, to just go back to representation and sort of the impact of representation, Like I'm a big geek, and I've been reading fantasy novels pretty much my whole life, or not my whole life, but as soon as I was able to pick one up. And it was really a sort of one of those moments of epiphany or paradigm shift or whatever you want to call it in the late 90s when I first picked up Game of Thrones, right? Because remember, before it was a show, it was a novel. And so I remember very distinctly I think it was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of high school, reading Tyrion Lannister and saying to myself, holy shit, right? And so I imagine that Puck probably could have a similar impact, right, on other people with dwarfism that are comics fans and not, fantasy lit fans. And, seeing him on the page and seeing that kind of representation, because it does matter, right? Because you can sort of internalize stereotypes, and you can, develop your own worldview in a way that's distorted by sort of cultural tropes, right? And that's true for anybody. And so, someone's own internalized, what we would call in the field ableism, right, is something that makes people's lives worse, right? Because they perhaps lower their own expectations for themselves, or just don't even know how to interpret their own experience as valid. Or just sort of how to even understand themselves. And so, yeah, I mean, I can say that Tyrion definitely wasn't exactly my my moral guiding light, but he definitely was sort of a character that young Joe could look to as, well, this is an alternative way to do dwarfism, as opposed to Gimli or whoever else appears in fantasy lit in this sort of magical kind of context.
Yeah, and I think this is in some ways me repeating the earlier point, but the magic component to it, as if that's required in order for a dwarf to exist in the world. That there has to be that it's a combination of a different race with magic suffusing things and altering things. So if you have a dwarf, then you have to have elves, and that's.
Oh, well, yeah. Northstar and Aurora are going to be elves here very soon.
Oh, okay.
That's for Joe. That's a whole other conversation, man. Like the amount of stuff going on with those two is just its own set of, my God.
Yeah, we like we said in the email, we have had experts on to talk about them too. So
Okay.
you're in good company here.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, to bring it back to Puck, though, I mean, and the explanation of his dwarfism. I mean, I think there's a couple things that are going on there. I think one is sort of what we've already talked about in terms of, there being this sort of need to characterize disability in a way that is sort of supernatural, and I think that can function. I mean, it's funny because I do think that there is this human need to try to explain the cause of disability, right? I think that whenever a child sees me, or not whenever, but often when a child sees me, they'll come up to me and they'll ask, how did you get like that, right? And of course, some less savvy adults. And so, this is the question that I face over and over again. And I think that, one thing that I do when I think about how to answer that is recognize that, that kind of curiosity isn't necessarily misplaced, right? I mean, I think it can be kind of dealt with badly, of course, but it's not necessarily misplaced, right? I think it's good to be curious about people that are different from you. I think the problem is when there's too much focus on causation, right? Because I think a lot of times when you have sort of a focus on causation, what that is kind of code for is, well, could this happen to me or somebody that I love, right? And it's coming out of really a place of fear rather than like legitimate curiosity and the experience of someone different than you.
And I think that can play in a bit to the mutant metaphor as well, where one of the things that makes the mutant problem, so to speak, so scary is that it can happen to anybody. Your kid could be a mutant. And when you hear that sentence and you replace the word mutant with any slur you can imagine, you start to realize why people are so afraid of mutants, because what if my kid was a whatever slur you really don't like? You know?
Yeah.
And so, like that causality, again, the mutancy doesn't have a cause. It's in you. It's how it is. And instead of rethinking what it means to be a person, they just say, oh, well, you were born not a person.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a characterization of, well, is this something that I need to be afraid of for myself or for someone else that's close to me? And I think the mutant analogy is a good one, because I don't think you could put in any slur, right? I think that
some of them make more sense than others.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
I think that when you think about something like the LGBTQ community, right? I think that that's a very nice analogy to what you're talking about here, with the mutants appearing in people's families and so on and so forth. But I also think that the causation of that is more widely understood than the causation of disability. And so you don't get people, coming up to somebody who's trans and saying, how did you get like that? Right? I'm assuming. I'm assuming. I mean, from the trans folks that I know, right? They'll have other rude things to say, but there won't be sort of this question of like, well, how did you become gay? Right? From little kids. And so, in my mind, disability is distinct and distinctive, because not only can it happen within your family at any given time, like a mutant, but it can happen to you at any given time, right? And so there is this sort of obsession with the causal mechanism of it. And so to then bring in, this backstory for Puck, I think it's not a coincidence that so much emphasis is put on how he became how he is, right? Because I think that is one of the main cultural concerns when we talk about disability, is the how, unfortunately.
And I think that you have really explained for us from a high level approach why this story sits so poorly in people's mouths, because we didn't need a causality. We had it already. He said it himself. He was a dwarf. It was back in number 5. Why are we doing this again? Mm-hmm. And then I really appreciate you having shed light on that angle for me. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, that storytelling element that isn't necessary. Like, basically, I mean, it has felt in reading this and knowing what was to come and having to dread it for multiple episodes as we were approaching it, that particular issue, that Mantlo is working backwards. And that's a terrible way to write a story, oftentimes. Like, sometimes it's fine. Like, if you're trying to, like, crack an idea for a story or whatnot, right? You have this image, and now you're trying to, like, fill in and so on. But the way he worked backwards was really much more to scratch a causal, as you're saying, a causal itch than it was to actually, like, expand the character in some respects. It was more he was more explaining how this particular person could be on this team, because obviously a dwarf couldn't be on the team, and that seems to be the unsaid statement that was partially taking place here.
And I think that's part of it. Another thing that bothered me so much is that it took Puck's difference, and in some of the previous episodes, you could almost see it as a strength, right? Mm-hmm. As he was good at cracking that drug ring, right?
Yeah, sneaking around inside of little things.
Yeah, exactly. And so, he has sort of that almost advantage, or we actually talk about it as disability gain, things that unexpectedly are advantages to someone with a disability, to sort of balance out the ledger, so to speak, between difficulty and well-being. And so, we saw a lot about his disability gain in some of the earlier episodes, and I felt like that. Well, yeah, I mean, that's that's pretty progressive. That's pretty cool to think about disability in ways that isn't just tragic, right? That isn't just sort of a matter of
a consequence.
The age-old trope of something bad happened to you. And so, and then this causal story, not only was it sort of annoying that it had to exist at all, but the particular one is just tired, right? Of something, his punishment for, being greedy and trying to steal the sword or whatever it was. And in disability studies, we call that the moral model of disability.
Right. That was partially a result of his moral failings that he ends up this way. Not that the Puck we've known up to this point who just is, right, and just is. And there, I don't know that if we covered it in one of the episodes you listened to or the issues we sent you, but he makes mention, Puck does, relatively early on. In a fight about how he learned how to, he was dealing with like someone charging at him, that he learned how to deal with this when he ran with the bulls with Papa Hemingway. And so, but this idea of Puck, doing all the, like, this black box, doing all these like fantastic and like just wild seeming things for people, just for people, but doing it as Puck is just such a like expansive idea of who he is, what is possible, is capable. It pushes on those edges. And now, was he Giant Judd when he did it instead? And that just really sticks in my craw more than a little bit.
Yeah, even knowing the timeline and everything, and him being older than we thought, also plays into the Hemingway reference, right?
Right.
And so I mean that's exactly right. Was he even Puck? And there is this weird question of identity too, right? In that you see a lot of disability tropes that talk about the real me is trapped inside, right? You see this a lot actually in the neurodiversity community, right? Not from neurodivergent people themselves, but a lot of times from their families, from their parents, right? Well, you'll have a mom of an autistic child say, "Well, that's not the real, so and so. He's trapped in there and needs to be released by these therapies or whatever, right?" And I think that it's no coincidence that the giant Judd is trapped inside the little person. I mean, that's just, you hear that trope over and over again, right? You're 10 feet tall in your mind, Joe. And it's just sort of like, why can't I just be who I am, and be seen as someone who has a legitimate place in the world and something to offer without having the real me obscured by my body somehow.
And that's something that both Puck and Box will say about themselves frequently, that they are half a man.
Yep.
And it's unpleasant. Before we turn to Box, though, I did want to ask one thing. Have you come across like the X-Men and the mutant metaphor as a metaphor for disability before? Have you read that?
Yes, actually. No, there is, I'm trying to think. I'm not a huge X-Men guy, but I like I know more about them than Alpha Flight, of course.
That's true. That's true. Almost everyone, man.
Yeah. But I'm thinking about I think it was the third film where they develop the cure for mutation and weaponize it.
Yep.
And so Magneto's all upset about that and so on. And I actually teach that film in some of my bioethics courses when thinking through disability and diversity and the social model of disability and just sort of what makes disability difficult, being sort of social stigma and other kinds of social forces, structural forces, rather than just sort of purely a problem with your body or your mind, right? I mean, because that's a huge theme in that film, right? Where you'll have some characters that might be frustrated by their mutation, and not necessarily want their mutation, right? And so it's an interesting metaphor for disability as it is, in that it's a mixed bag. Sometimes it's an advantage, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's something that can increase your well-being with different disability gains, and sometimes it's painful in various ways.
That split between some people might want to take the cure for mutancy and some people wouldn't reminds me of, you can come across that in the deaf community as well. At a former job, one of my coworkers was deaf when we met, and she got a cochlear implant. And over the course of the years we worked together, it was interesting to talk to her as she's re-entering the world of being able to hear. And she said, "Good Lord, this music that I hear on the radio, do people listen to this all day? Do they fill their head with these thoughts and these words? Is this what's wrong with society?" And I'm like, "Here, try Bob Marley. I think you'll like it better." But she said that she had, as she went through this with her kids as well, they both got implants, that their relationship with their community had changed with some of the members of the community, because some of the members of the community feel as though taking that cure, to put it in the X-Men 3, is leaving the community. And I don't know enough to say one way or another about anything about it, other than I did see this happen. And I love that X-Men 3 is being taught in an academic setting.
Yeah. Actually, the topic of the book that I'm writing right now is the ethics of choosing disability, and that's exactly the kind of case that I'm trying to think through. Right? Are these situations in which someone has a choice on whether or not to bring disability into the world or allow it to continue in the world?
I look forward to reading this book, Joe. Not many comic book podcast hosts are probably going to be picking this one up, but we will absolutely let everybody know when this book comes out.
Sounds great. Okay.
Here, let's move on to Box then. We don't want to take up too much of your time. You have young minds to mold and meetings to attend, I'm sure. Box has a different case because it comes out later on. They never really tell us why Box doesn't have the bottom half of his legs. And I have tried hard whenever I have to describe Box for the audience to say that he doesn't have legs below his knees. I don't say his legs end before they should, because I'm trying not to use that language of saying he should be like this. I'm saying this is who Roger is. And that's my little bit that I'm trying to do here. But when he uses the word cripple, when he talks about his legless self, how is there a better way to talk about this? What's the state of the C word these days? Can you tell us that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the safest way to describe Box would probably just be to use the A word and talk about him as an amputee. And, you can even talk about him as a double amputee. Right.
And I think they come to say that it's like some...
It seems to come out through his son, who appears later, who neither one of us knew about until it's a whole thing. But that it's a congenital condition that led to the amputation. But that we know via an entry online. It's comics, so what have you. But near as we can tell, it's a congenital condition that led to amputation.
So we're not sure if he's been amputated, so...
You can be a congenital amputee.
Yeah.
That is a thing.
Oh, okay. So even okay.
Yeah,
cool.
if you're born without certain body parts, that's just called
amputation. Does not require a knife.
An actual removal of a limb. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I do technically count as an amputee myself because I'm missing a toe and a half.
Really?
Yeah, I happened right before I came to college, actually. But yeah, I fought a lawnmower and lost.
Oh,
so.
Crap.
As most people do when they fight lawnmowers.
Yeah, one guy versus one lawnmower. We ain't winning, man.
Yeah, 100. Tell you what, 100 guys versus one lawnmower. The lawnmower's winning, much like the gorilla.
There's going to be a double-digit casualty count on that one. Anyway, so that's my little claim to my little bit of disability, is to say, yes, I am technically an amputee, sir.
Well, I'm glad you only lost a couple of toes.
1.5. It wasn't even a full couple. It just rounds up to a couple.
Okay. Well, it could have gone much worse for you, I'm sure. Yeah, no, so for Box, I think amputee is probably, a decent word to use as reference. I would also say, as far as the C word goes, it's interesting because a lot of it's contextual, right? And so I think in the early 80s or mid 80s when this was being written, the C word was meant in a way to indicate suffering, right? To indicate sort of the trope of, disability equals tragedy, disability equals, some kind of pain, physical or psychological. And so, with his use of the word cripple, or even I know that Puck uses it too, at one point when he says something like, what is a cripple going to teach another cripple or something? And so I think those uses of the word tend to be pejorative, and sort of drawing on this close cultural association between disability and suffering, which is, I think, probably the dominant narrative of disability, in our Western society, and why so much of our infrastructure is aimed at trying to eliminate disability. I don't think it's necessarily the at the time the best way to talk about disability. With that said, there are people in the disability community that have started to try to reclaim the word cripple, very much like queer, right? Where, if you saw the Q word, in a comic in the 80s, it probably would not be being used in an empowering way.
It wouldn't have been used at all because the Comics Code Authority would not have allowed them to use the word.
And so, it's, if it was in pop culture back then, it wasn't in any kind of, queer pride kind of way. It was used as a slur. My Twitter handle, I don't really use Twitter anymore. I used to be fairly big on Twitter, and my Twitter handle was Philosopher Crip.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was sort of a nod to the way in which the term is being reclaimed as political, right? And not necessarily talking about someone's, body so much as their political identity, and, how they conceive of themselves in their body, as sort of something to be recognized and embraced and perhaps even celebrated in certain contexts.
So it's like Clerks 2. Some people are taking it back.
Yeah. I think that's about right. We're trying to take it back.
It's been, I don't know, we've done 27. The 27th episode went up yesterday. I think that's the first time Chris has actually managed to get a Kevin Smith reference in on this podcast.
That's
which
shocking.
Is right.
Well, it doesn't interact with Canadian superheroes that often.
Okay. However, in college, how often did you manage to shoehorn something from Kevin Smith into every conversation? So I'm glad. I think we're all glad to see some growth. Is all I'm pointing to.
Well, one of the aspects that I thought was interesting here was with both of these characters in a single book, and that book being part of the American comic books milieu. We all know that comic books are wish fulfillment in terms of body fantasies for men, and not just the fantasies for the women, but the bodies of the men. Mm-hmm. And having these alternative examples of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a hero, it really hurts to see how much Mantlo undercuts the fact that these are half men and not to be taken seriously. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And eventually Roger will get his legs back and he'll get skinny and hot and buff. And then he's dating Aurora, and then he goes egomaniac and when he gets dumped. And
Joe, I'm reading all of these as we get to them. So I don't know what's coming. And every so often he drops something like this. And I question why I'm doing this goddamn podcast.
I think the first thing that I dropped was, oh yeah, Puck's not actually a dwarf.
You told me that. You actually told me that in college at one point. But so I've had that knowledge in my head for like 20 plus years.
So Roger's story ends horribly tragically, and it is all about him getting away from this character that we meet in the pages that you were reading, and shedding all of that behind him and totally embracing being a whole man. And it's so heartbreaking. I didn't want to make you read those issues. Also, they're not very good, but that's neither here nor there.
Unfortunately, it's not terribly surprising. I think in general, when you see storylines of disabled characters in pop culture, one of two things usually happens to them. Either they're cured or they're killed, right? It's very, very rare that you don't have the ending of a movie or a book or a TV show that doesn't involve the disabled character, especially if they're a main character, either dying or cured of their disability somehow.
Relearning how to walk type of thing. Yeah. A triumph story or a tragedy story. And those are the only extremes that you get to exist
Yes.
in.
You can't continue to exist in the world as a flourishing disabled person. You either need to die or you need to be cured. Right. And so, it's not shocking to hear that somehow, Box gets his legs back. How boring. I mean, that would be my response.
But that's part of what drives me crazy about all this with Puck. Now, apparently, what was coming down the line with Box is Puck's a fascinating character. Puck is just so interesting. Why do we have to shoehorn him into like a fucking trope? Like he was something very different on the page that was happening and you got to enjoy. And up until the Mantlo run kicked in, there really was none of this self-deprecation, this referring to himself with a slur, like, and using the word as a slur against himself and against Roger.
Yeah.
And against Roger. I mean, like, it's just, like Joe, this has been, I tone it down a lot. Or I edit a lot of it out when I'm fixing the episodes, but it's just lazy, and it's not even lazy. It's just shitty storytelling, and that as on top of all the other layers that you're doing a fantastic job, and thank you so much for like digging into for us. But on top of all, setting all of that framework aside, it's shitty storytelling, and that's insulting on its own terms, right? So there's that too. It's also interesting to me, and this is, I don't think you necessarily heard enough episodes to know that the character Sasquatch, Walter Langowski, is my bête noire. I hate that character. I think he's a bully. I think he's a real piece of shit, all that. And their first interaction, I feel like he was deliberately bullying Puck a little bit.
At the very end of issue 1 that I know we sent to you, but it's like in the very last page where he calls him short stuff or something.
And then just like, and he's like this, blonde former football player. Now he's a doctor. Now he's turned himself into this and all that. His failings as a person really did a great job of emphasizing what a fantastic character Puck is. And his absence from the book might actually be more of a loss than I thought, because we don't get that counterpoint. And that's really frustrating to me. I'm actually more frustrated that I miss Walt in this moment than the fact that, anyway, that's just a random aside from me.
Our listeners will probably get that one more than you, Joe, but...
No, I mean, that's an interesting idea, though, to have sort of a foil, right? And almost think about, I was referring to disability gain earlier, right? But you could almost think about it in terms of Puck's disability gain, morally speaking, right? In that my dissertation was actually on disability and moral psychology and the ways in which experiencing disability can change how you perceive and reason about moral problems. And so this might be a little bit of an illustration of that, where, by experiencing different forms of oppression, like ableism, perhaps Puck is a better human being than he otherwise would have been. I sometimes talk about that myself in terms of, like, if I wasn't born with dwarfism, I'd probably be an investment banker or something. Just because, like, I don't know that I would have ever discovered philosophy in this way. In thinking through, the politics of oppression and experiences of people that are marginalized.
It's kind of interesting we've gone down this tangent, because one of the things that Walt does do in the comic before his death, that Chris tells me isn't going to be permanent, damn it, is he changes Aurora. Aurora and Northstar are mutants. And one of their powers is that when they touch, they create this blinding light. And they had a falling out, and she wanted to have her powers be separated from Jean-Paul's, her brother. And he changes her because they're together, and that was the request she makes. He alters her physical structure such that she's no longer dependent upon touching Jean-Paul to create this light. However, in the thought bubbles, he's also doing this in order to make her no longer register as a mutant, that he's also trying to make her pass. And they don't say that, but that's exactly what Chris and I took out of it. And yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting point. It's an interesting thought process to go down.
No, passing is a super interesting idea. I've actually written a little bit about the ethics of passing. And so it was kind of interesting when you sort of called me out, so to speak, to self-identify, because I think that, especially if you have positions of authority, positions of power, that you almost have a moral responsibility not to pass in order to challenge some of these tropes and some of these problematic, narratives, right? And so, I think that, when you have a conception of who a philosophy professor is or who a superhero is, right? Or who, a fantasy literature character is, not necessarily making the disability identity the only thing that matters to the story, but, making it something that is relevant in a way that speaks to, or maybe speaks against, some of the toxic bullshit out there, right? I think even in our everyday lives, by not passing, but by, uncovering our various marginalized identities, we can sort of clap back against some of these tropes. And so it's interesting to sort of think about passing through the lens of a fictional character, and how that works, and what the ethics around that might be. I don't know enough about the story of Aurora, but I would be curious to think about how she thinks of herself as a mutant or not after she's been.
Oh, she has a split identity. Occasionally slips back into a safe state where she's more of a Quebecois school marm.
Although moving on, Aurora will be associated with some mutant teams, but she is not like an Xavier's Dream. She is not out fighting for mutant rights. The fact that she's a mutant doesn't really come up. She's a superhero and ends up bouncing around with some other teams. So no, she doesn't really engage that mutant side. From what I've read, I'm a little weak after 2010 or so, I'll grant that, in the way that her brother Northstar, who still apparently registers as a mutant, is much more involved in the X-Men and the mutant.
Although that's the question, is that also because Northstar is a gay character and was the first out gay Marvel character, right? Like I've got that history right, correct, Chris?
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm wondering if that also strengthened the association with his being a mutant in some respects, or at least how being a mutant is discussed within the Marvel universe or conceived of by the writers. So,
and this question of anti-passing, right? Mm-hmm. Passing is something that happens within the disability community, but it really happens within any marginalized political identity, right? And so to see sort of how the North Star character sort of rejects sort of the temptation to pass, on two levels.
No, he tried. Don't get me wrong. He just got sucked into it and then never tried to get away too hard. Golly, Joe, you've given me a lot to think about here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've taken up a good chunk of your time. Is there any other thoughts that you wanted to touch on, or anything else that we didn't cover that we kind of threw out there in our email exchanges? That makes sense?
I have one thing I wanted to cover. Now, Joe, I think the last time I talked to you was when I moved down here about 10 years ago, and I said, Joe, are you aware that there is a school nearby that uses the mascot, the Midgets? That it's the Freeburg, Illinois Midgets, because their minibus, so help me God, it's a short bus, Joe. It comes to my daughter's tumbling studio, and that's where their cheerleaders do their practicing. So about once a week, I show up there, and it's the Freeburg Midgets right in front of me. What's the state of the M word, if you'd be so kind?
Yeah, two things. Okay, one I'm going to say is...
One, fuck those guys.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. There actually has been some progress in this area. I'm not sure. I haven't followed it that closely. But Little People of America, which is an organization that I used to be very involved with their advocacy efforts, actually did a whole campaign against the M word as a mascot, and specifically in Freeburg. And so I think there has actually been some movement on this issue. I need to go and do a better Google search to sort of see what the movement is, but I feel like they might be getting ready to retire that mascot.
It would be a lovely sign of change in a place that doesn't change.
Yeah, yeah. But yes, the state of the M word is, as you might have guessed, pretty problematic, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's the etymology and the history of the word that we can look to. The etymology comes from the word midge, which is a small annoying bug. And so midget. And then the history of the word, to give even more context, is P.T. Barnum really brought it into popular parlance as a distinction, actually, between people with proportional dwarfism versus non-proportional dwarfism. Okay? And so the idea was he wanted in his shows to put under the main tent and really highlight, as the most beautiful and interesting kinds of dwarf bodies, people with proportional dwarfism. Okay, so in other words, they just look like an average sized person shrunk down, versus someone like myself that has disproportionate dwarfism with very short limbs and a longer torso. Okay, and so he used that term to establish a kind of hierarchy within the little person community, sort of calling people with the proportionate dwarfism midgets and making them out to be sort of the more desirable kinds of bodies. Okay, and so that's another reason why it's super problematic.
Okay, Tom and I are just sitting here gape-mouthed. Okay, any story that starts out with P.T. Barnum is at the root of this, I'm like, this does not end well.
Yeah. And so, it was, a divisive term within the dwarf community, establishing this hierarchy mostly for the gains of non-dwarf people, namely, entertaining the entertainment industry. And so, it fell out of fashion in the 80s and 90s. It really became sort of seen as more and more of a slur. It's not something that we use now. And I think it's interesting that that's the word that's used in the image that's used over and over again in the entertainment industry for, these kinds of objectifying roles or objectifying portrayals, right? You don't see high schools with, the dwarfs as their mascot necessarily, right? Or the little people, right? It's the M word. Or even, when you see, midget wrestling, right? It's not little person wrestling, right? And I think that is a kind of throwback to the roots of the term in the entertainment industry that was sort of objectifying human beings for the gain of others.
So if it was advertised as little people wrestling, would there be less wrong with it, or would it still pretty much not be something you'd want to engage in?
Oh, I think it would still be, pretty problematic.
Just checking while I have a chance to ask an expert.
In that it was objectifying. I'm just pointing out that it's not an accident that the M word is being deployed here in this way, right? Rather than another term.
I can see the gears working on Tom right now, just trying to say something other than, oh, fuck.
I mean, there's that. I'm also thinking, I think this is true in every state, but high school mascots in Illinois are a hell of a thing. The Pekin Dragons, who weren't always the Dragons. They were the CHINCSs previous to that.
I have seen the shirts myself, Joe, because I grew up not far from Pekin. And yeah, they still exist, and there are places that actively still sell that merch today to the old folks who want to cling to the old ways.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I said, I think most states have some pretty screwed up high school mascots, but there's a certain flavor to the ones in Illinois that really, really hits you here, hits you right there.
And there's a bill working through the state legislature that's trying to ban the use of ethnic minorities as a mascot, which is essentially targeting indigenous names and things like that. And in my area here in southwestern Illinois, it's not been taken well when people are told that they have to change things. And there's been a lot of local pushback that seems nonpartisan. If you're picking up what I'm throwing down, it's a mindset of people that this is a perfectly fine way to talk about people, and it rolls into the same thing with the midgets. Wow, this has been the best conversation I've had in a month, other than you, Tom. Other than you, I love it.
Yeah, I'm glad you snuck that in there, jackass.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Joe. It has been great talking about these very serious issues in a very non-serious format, because like you said earlier, that visibility and representation matters. Hearing these conversations matter, and hearing people say, hey, maybe don't use that word, or this is why we don't use that word, not just, oh, don't do that, I'm trying to control you. No, I'm trying to let you know how much of a jerk you're being without realizing it.
Exactly.
Or also, interrogate your media. Why did this story for Puck happen to crop up the way it does? Why are Roger and Puck talking to each other and about themselves in this way? Like, a little critical thinking goes a very long way. I say that out loud and I just stare into the void. Anyway.
Well, that's what we're both trying to do, I think. All three of us is trying to facilitate greater critical thinking around these important issues to people's lives. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here and to have these conversations.
And that wraps up our Summer Spectacular. We had a great time pulling this together and hope you enjoyed it too. Let us know if you have ideas for our next Spectacular, because, yeah, we're not even halfway through Volume 1 yet. And just remember, no villain is as pathetic as Diablo, for whom I did my best Skeletor.
Oh, that's who it was. I was hearing one of the minor Venture Brothers villains from the Guild of Calamitous Intent, because they also do their worst Skeletor.
Okay, well, that was my best Skeletor.
Why Not Read Alpha Flight with Chris and Tom is recorded in Chicago, Illinois, and deep beneath stately Baker Manor in a fashionable neighborhood outside St. Louis. It is written by Chris Baker, edited by Tom Flynn, with cat noises courtesy of Teeny, the chunky calico. And today we have kid noises from my youngest and their friend, who are over here watching How to Train Your Dragon. Our theme song today is Oh Canada by One World Youth Arts Project. New episodes are released every other Monday at www.thewhynotpod.com and wherever you get your podcasts.
Please take a moment to rate our show on your preferred podcast platform, and take a moment to mention the show to someone you think would like it wherever you talk to fellow Alpha fans. And maybe follow us on Blue Sky or Instagram, because those things really help our show grow, and yeah, we really do appreciate it.
Next time, North Star punches that alligator.
And that alligator totally deserved it.
See ya.